Kirk. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Megan?
I'm doing really well. Welcome, everybody, to ArtSpeak University. So excited to have Kirk here. He's one of our founders here at ArtSpeak, and he's going to be talking to us about finding the shared win even when it's hard. So he'll be talking about some common stressors on creative teams, how to understand ourselves and others during disagreements, and how to resolve conflicts in a way that strengthens relationships. So I'm super excited to hear from him. If you have any questions for Kirk while he's talking, feel free to drop them using the blue Ask Question box on the bottom right. And if you're new to ArtSpeak University, we have an entire community, online community with other ArtSpeak University replays and resources and other great stuff to really help you out. So be sure to check that out. We can drop a link for that in the chat for you. But yeah, I'm going to throw it over to Kirk. Kirk, take it away.
Here we go. Taking it away. Thank you, Megan. Yeah. So we've been over the last several weeks. We've starting this conversation on interpersonal communication. Where we're ArtSpeak Creative. We're a communication company. We help organizations communicate with their audiences, and we use a tool called the communication triangle. But the reality is that that same tool, the same principles apply to any and all communication, at least in our experience. And so what we've been doing is taking some of those principles that, yeah, you can scale up and you can use on a massive organization, or you can scale it down and it can be you and anybody else that you want to communicate with. Now, these principles, I think they apply about anywhere. Now, I'm going to kind of center the conversation today around the context of a team, people that you're working alongside. Maybe that's a workplace, maybe that's a volunteer team at a church, for instance, or just people that you have to work with these people. And I want to talk about conflict now. Some of you are already braced for this. Like, even just talking about conflict, you might feel it in your stomach because you don't like conflict. And that makes sense. There's good reason for that. But I want to start with the foundation, this idea that conflict is not bad. In fact, anytime that you have more than one person together for long enough, you're going to start to have some conflict. You're going to have to get through some differences of opinion, some frustrations that happen with each other. And so conflict is going to happen. It's inevitable if you're going to work with people. But it's not bad, or at least it doesn't have to be bad. In fact, conflict can be a good sign. If there is no conflict in a team, in an organization, in a family, in a marriage, that can be a sign that actually something is very wrong. That can be a sign that either nobody cares anymore, or people are too afraid to address the conflict that obviously exists. And so when there is conflict and it's handled in healthy ways, actually things get better. That conflict handled well can actually increase good communication and strengthen relationships. And in fact, the people that I have the closest relationships with today are people that I have had conflicts with. And we've been able to address that and resolve that. And now I know with this person that as we go through life, yeah, we might bump into each other on things, but we're able to resolve it, and that boosts my confidence and trust that this is a person that I can and want to do life with. And so conflict's not bad, but there's some principles here that we can go through to help us resolve conflicts in healthy ways. My other disclaimer here is that conflict is complex, and there's a lot of different kinds of conflicts. I'm not going to talk about every scenario. I'm not going to be able to cover all the different kinds of contexts around conflict, all the different kinds of conflict, because there's a lot of different things that we could talk about. But what I do want to give you is some principles that you can use that are going to help in any conflict. Some of them may not always apply. And I've structured this as in a roughly like a step-by-step process, but the intent is not to give you like, here's a rigid formula every time there's a conflict. Yep, follow step one, step two. Conflict doesn't always work that way. Conflict can get messy. Um, let's talk about the communication triangle and dig into some principles that are going to help you. So when we talk about the communication triangle, there's a vertex down here, that's you. There's a vertex on the other side, that's them. That's who you want to talk to. And if you come up here, there's some things that you want. There's some changes that you want to see happen. There's some things that they want. Uh, you'll also notice what I've highlighted here, what I've circled are these gaps. There's a gap between you and them. That can be your history with that person. That can be your perception of them, their perception of you. Are people like you? They may have a category for you. You may have a category for them that you've put them in. That can be a gap. There's also a gap between you and what you want. And that person might be part of that gap. They might be involved in that gap. You may need something from them in order to cross that gap. They have a gap too between them and what they want. And again, you might be part of that gap for them. And that's where conflict happens. That's where it begins. And so I'm going to give you the shortcut. Too long didn't read. Here's the answer. 4 things you're going to need to resolve conflict in healthy ways. Ready? Empathy, honesty, confidence, humility. All right. So I want you to look through the threads of those things. As we talk about these principles, it comes down to these 4 things. And so we're going to jump in. Step 1, resolve conflict. Find yourself in a conflict. That might be harder to do than you realize. It may be harder for you to realize that you're in a conflict because we all process this in different ways. We have different, this goes to attachment theory, this talks about personalities, your history. I'll give you an example. A great friend of mine came from a really quiet, reserved family. All right. If someone was yelling in that family, that was DEFCON 5. Like, what is happening? Someone actually raised their voice. Didn't happen. He married someone who came from a large, boisterous, loud family that everybody was yelling all the time. And that was normal. And if it was quiet, that's when something was wrong. And so in their relationship, they had different views of what a conflict was. Because she would be yelling about something and he would feel like, oh no, this is DEFCON 5. Or he wasn't talking because that in his paradigm, that's what you did. If you were frustrated, you just figured it out and you didn't talk about it. And that told her, oh my goodness, it's terrible. And so they had to get to where they recognizing when a conflict was occurring, how severe was that conflict, and what are we going to do about it? Some of us, our approach when we detect a conflict, we go, no, let's fix it right now. Oh, you're not texting me back. Oh no. That feels like a problem. Others of us, we have a more avoidance style, like, oh man, I feel like there's a conflict. I just got to get out of here for now. And these are strategies and tendencies that we've learned through our history, through the way that we were raised, our childhood growing up. And we need to be aware of that. Sometimes that's helpful for us. Sometimes that may be exactly what we need. Maybe it was exactly the strategy we need in those times where we learned it to get us through those tricky situations. We may have to adjust our strategies now. And so for some of us, we need to recognize when there's a conflict. Now, here's where conflict happens: unmet expectations and crossed boundaries. I should clarify that it's the perception of unmet expectations, the perception of crossed boundaries. Um, Unmet expectations is where frustrations come from. You expected one thing to happen, it didn't happen, or it's not happening. Uh, or cross boundary where this is something important to you. This is a value. This is a boundary that I've tried to set, and someone I perceive as someone has crossed it. That's where anger comes from. Now, some of us, especially in the church space, in the church world, we kind of, do not let the sun go down in your anger. We feel like, oh, I'm not supposed to be angry. So I felt angry, but I got rid of it. So it's all good. It's all good. Except maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. And so we need to recognize when we are frustrated. We need to recognize where, no, yeah, that was a boundary that was important to me. It's crossed, and now I need to take action on that. I don't I shouldn't just suppress that. We learned this in the context of church planting. I was a church planter, and we would bring in, we would have volunteers. We go through, they come in, they'd go through. If you're familiar with the ARC model, we did Dream Team, and so they would come on and we would do a gifts assessment, and we would get them plugged in as a volunteer, and we'd try and figure out, yeah, this is what you're passionate about, this is what you're excited about. Yeah, let's plug you in over here. And early on, they would, yeah, I'm all in. Yeah, I'll do that. And we'd say, can you do this? Yeah, I'll do that. And they would sign up for all the things. But at some point, they'd cross a threshold where, oh my goodness, this is way more than I feel like that I can do. But then they felt like they couldn't express, like, oh, this is too much. They didn't feel like there was a way out. And so they would just kind of stuff the frustration, stuff the exasperation, the exhaustion, and eventually just burn out and disappear. And they'd just be gone because they didn't know a mechanism for, like, okay, how do I come down from here and still be involved and still find fulfillment and using my gifts here without just totally leaving. we I find that here at ArtSpeak, we see a similar pattern sometimes. When someone new comes in, they say yes to a bunch of things that people say, yeah, can you take on this project, this project, this project? But they've crossed a barrier, a threshold of how much they can really take. And it's important that we recognize when we're finding that I had this expectation and there's a frustration there. And it's better to address that than not. Um, because when you resolve conflict in a healthy way, when you resolve unmet expectations and cross boundaries in a healthy way, it's it's a kindness both for yourself and for the other person. It can be difficult. Some of us are wired, again, some of us are wired, no, I'm going to address this conflict head on as soon as I see it. Others of us are like, that's hard, I don't want to do that. But when we can overcome those barriers, we can get to a healthier place. So identify that you are in a conflict, and judge how severe is this, because sometimes you need to step away from it, get a clearer picture in your mind, cool down a little bit, and understand how big is this, and what's the right way to approach it. And that goes to step two here. It begins with you. It starts with you. Before you're talking to this other person, before you're going to them, before you're trying to solve this problem, there's a lot going on in your own head. Once you've figured out that you are frustrated or angry or in a conflict, by the way, sometimes that conflict is not your frustrations or your anger, but you realize someone else is angry. Someone else is mad at me. What do I do with that? That's also a conflict, and but the principles still apply here. So step two begins with you. Number one, first, you're going to need to check in with your nervous system state. We've been talking about this. We've talked about buckets, as in you have one bucket for your capacity to handle stress, and it all goes in one place. The world events, family stuff, work stuff, all of it. It all goes in one bucket. And so, how is your bucket right now? Because if you're feeling, you're this may look different ways for you, but you can identify when you're in a fight or flight state or a shutdown state. I encountered this just recently. I was in a fight or flight state because it'd been a stressful day. My bucket was pretty full. There's a lot going on, and there were some unresolved conversations, tasks, problems to solve. And but I couldn't do anything about that at the moment. I had to work on another big important project, but I could not concentrate. And instead of being able to focus on this project, I kept finding myself in this loop of, oh, I need to check Slack. I need to check my email. I need to check my phone. I need to check Slack, check emails, check my phone. I don't know if that happens to anybody else, but that's the cue for me that I'm in fight or flight. My body is like, I need to take action now. And so recognize that. That might look different for you. You might learn other ways that shows up for you. But that means I need to address that before I'm going to be able to have access to my full frontal lobe and address this situation accurately. For me, by the way, I need to go take a walk. Better yet, If I can go for a run, and there's lots of science behind why this helps you. One, it tells your body, yeah, we're taking action. Look, we ran away. We moved. And that helps your body adjust and then get to a state where, okay, now I can address the problem for real. Um, but then you need to identify what is the frustration or boundary that's at work here. Ask why. Why do I feel this way? Um, what's going on in me? Why is this frustrating me? Why they said that, they did that, I feel frustrated about it. Why? Maybe that answer feels obvious, but maybe not. I don't know. For me, sometimes I feel frustrated, but I'm not even sure what's going on. I don't know what the real issue is. Sometimes you discover it has a lot more to do with the rest of the stuff in the bucket than that thing. Secondly, what if you can identify what is that missed expectation? I expected this and it didn't happen. And if you can push on from there and say what would a win look like in this situation for you? What is it that you want in this communication triangle? Also, what is your fear? Because likely this tension that you feel has a lot to do, has not necessarily to do with what's already happened, but what you fear will happen because of this. And you need to identify that. Finally, you need to reframe your thoughts about the person. When something goes wrong with people, we kind of our default mode for all of us is to assume the worst. Assume that they did this on purpose because they're a jerk. Um, and and that first result is usually far from accurate. Anybody here's what happens to me. Anybody you're in a hurry to leave the house. You're trying to get ready. You're running late, and you got to get out the door, but you can't find your wallet or whatever it is for you. And your first thought, this happens to me more times than I want to admit. My first thought is, who moved it? Who moved my wallet from where it always is, right here? And I get angry, at supposedly at my son, my wife, like, why did they move this? Until I realize, oh, I moved it. I, I put it over there because I used it. But assume the best. Assume about the other person that they did that for some reason that made sense to them, and that their intentions were good, even if the current results seem bad. And then start with gratitude. Can you get to a place where you are grateful for that person? If you can't get there, by the way, then that's an indication for me that I am not ready to address this with this person. If I can't get to a place of gratitude, that is to say, if I can't get to a place where in confident humility, I see the value in them, I'm attributing value to them in gratitude. If I can't get there, I'm not ready to address the situation. I'm going to practice empathy. I'm going to try and lean in and figure out what might they be thinking? What might they be feeling? Do I know details about what's going on in their life right now? Maybe I don't. But I could go through scenarios that might be happening that might explain why they reacted that way or why they did that or why they didn't do that. And finally, this is key. You've got to separate the problem from the person. If in your mind the person is the problem, there is no solution to this. There's no win. But if you can separate the problem from the person, now you have the basis for when you engage in this conversation with this person, you have a problem that together you can solve. You can team up with that person now to solve a problem instead of being me versus you. All right, this is all way easier said than done. Um, but this is the hard work of getting to a mindset of empathetic honesty and confident humility. Let me break that down. Like the empathy is leaning into what's their experience, trying to get past your assumptions about them, trying to get past your accusations of them, feel to figure out what they're feeling. The honesty part is getting clear about what are your expectations and boundaries here. Because if we can't pinpoint that, one, you don't know why you're frustrated if you can't get clear there. And there you can't find a solution for that because you don't know what it is. In confidence, you need to bring your nervous system state into a place where you're calm as you can be. Again, this is conflict is messy, and there's no perfect score here. But get to a place of calm confidence, and then finally, in humility, you're going to come in and you're going to be ready to listen to them because they have a perspective and a point of view that's different than yours, and you have missing data. And so once you get there, now you're ready to set up a productive conversation. Okay? Because here's a key point about resolving conflict. Um, you notice right now that none of this has been. I go to my friend and I tell my friend how terrible a person, how much this person was a jerk to me. Because if you start going to other people, you're multiplying the conflict. Right now, you've got a conflict with a person. If you start bringing in other third parties, well, now they have a conflict with that person. They have a conflict with that person. And so that does not set you up for success. Instead, what we want to do is go to that person. We want to talk to them first. Because here's the reality that I've seen so many times in life. Sometimes there's that frustration, there's that boundary that's been crossed, there's that conflict that you feel, and that other person doesn't even know about it yet. They didn't know that there was a frustration. They didn't know that there was a problem. Uh, and just having an honest conversation, it takes care of the whole issue. But if you talk to someone else first, now the person they start to pick up on the idea that, oh my goodness, there's an us, there's a them versus me here. There's a battle going on. And now defenses are up. And now you've lost your opportunity for a quick conversation and resolution. And so in doing that, so you're going to go to that person. And again, depending on your context here, maybe that's a quick phone call. That's maybe you have to maybe you're in a remote work context like ours, where that might be might have to start with a Slack conversation, a Slack message, direct message to them. Um, and yeah, that's good. What I want to get to at the end, boy, time goes fast, is some examples here. Um, Frame that conversation, affirm their value, say, hey, I'd like to talk about this. Uh, I'm, you can lean into empathy, say, I'm sure you've got a lot going on, but this happened and this is how it affected me. Can we talk through that? And in that calm confidence, you frame the conversation, say, I value you. We want to talk and find a win-win here. Because all people want these things: be safe, be connected, be valued. All people want that. And if you can tell a person that you're in conflict with, that I want that for you too, I want to help you be safe, be connected, be valued, all of a sudden the temperature in the conversation goes way down. Way down. This is the key, friends. You want to resolve conflict and walk away with a stronger relationship. Come in, separate the person from the problem, and tell this person, I want to help you. I know that this is what you want. Be safe, be connected, be valued. Come in with expressing value. So, confident humility, empathetic honesty, real quick. Approach the conversation with calm confidence. If you've done that work ahead of time, then you can do that. You can come in and say, and separate the emotion and the person from the problem and approach it with calm confidence. Confidence that you're going to find a win win. Express value and appreciation. Come in and say, thank you for this. I appreciate the way that you did this. I appreciate your passion about this issue, even though right now we disagree. You can find things to appreciate and affirm their value. Be honest about your expectation and boundaries. Again, this is framing up the conversation. And this is where you probably heard this before in conflict resolution. You use I statements rather than you statements. We're not coming in with, you did this, you're a jerk. It's not accusations. It's, when this happened, I felt this way. Or being honest about it. This is what I need to do my job, or to be healthy, or if this is in a relationship, this is what I need. I hope for this. I fear this. My concern about this. When you did this, I'm concerned that it will lead to this result. You're being honest in this conversation. But now it's time to listen. You've explained to this person why we need to talk, that I value them, and now it's time to lean into listening. So this is where you say, help me understand what happened here. Help me understand why you decided to do that. And as they share, tell me more. It's a great phrase. They share something, you feel like there's more there, ask them to tell me more. You're communicating value this whole time, by the way. And they're feeling connected because they're feeling heard, especially when you turn around and say, I'm hearing you say this. And if you can, you might have to go back and forth several times until they agree. Yeah, you're hearing me now. You understand my perspective. Honestly, 86% made up figure of all conflict is resolved at this stage. You get here where the other person feels like you have heard me. That is most of this process. But sometimes there's some concrete things that you're going to have to work through to figure out where's the win-win. And so you need to identify what was their expectation? What were their boundaries? What are their fears here? And as you do that, here's where the humility comes in. You got to be ready to accept some responsibility, because my experience in these kind of conversations is that I find out, oh yeah, it makes sense now why you said that or why you were frustrated, because I should have done this. I had some skin in the game. Now maybe in that process you feel like, well, it's still 95% then, it's just 5% me. But if you're not willing to own your responsibilities in the context, then you set up a situation where they don't feel like they need to own it either. But if you can be vulnerable, say, yep, I own that, then you empower them to own it too. Um, and then you're going to work to find the win-win. And we're going to talk about that a lot more next week. Next week is all about finding the win-win. And so I'm going to hit pause on that right now. And I want to get to a couple quick examples and then questions. One example, just super. I mean, it seems silly, but it's these kind of things, and you can scale up and down. My wife likes the kitchen countertop clean and clear, but we work from home, and I have a particular coffee mug that I use all the time, and it's the only one that really suits my need. I use it every day. And so I always need it in the morning, and so I'll leave it there on the countertop because I know I'm going to use it again in the morning. But Amy would see the coffee cup on the countertop, and she's like, and she would put it in the dishwasher, and then she'd start the dishwasher, and I would come like, "Where's my coffee cup?" And it would be available when I wanted it or needed it. Okay, that's a minor conflict, but it was one that we had to talk through. We had to communicate. We found the win-win. We expressed, this is what I expected, this is what I wanted, this is what I needed, this is what I expected, this is what I wanted. We found a solution. We found a win-win. We just agreed that that cup was my responsibility. I was going to clean it every day, and I would always know where it is. Problem solved. Um, but sometimes it's bigger than that. I did a practicum at a multicultural church, and there was a youth pastor there. There was all the different congregations there from different cultural backgrounds. There was an Arab church there, and there was an English-speaking church and an African church, but there's only one youth group. And the youth pastor, and so all of these groups had different ideas about what it meant for, well, bottom line, is it okay to date, or is arranged marriages still the thing to do? And what I observed from there is that instead of looking at this as a conflict resolution scenario where you find a win-win, that youth pastor, but I understand the pressures on him, but he came into that conversation with all of his arguments for why he was going to teach about dating the way he was. And he came in and just rapid fired. And it pushed the conversation into a rift. But it could have been solved by coming and saying, I have these values. I see you have these values. How can we talk about this in a way that serves our youth well? All right. Let's check out some questions here. in the couple minutes that we have left.
Okay, that was fantastic, Kirk. I have a couple of questions here from the audience for you. We'll just go through a couple of them because we're almost out of time. But the first one we have is from Andrew. He asked, how is this approach different in a peer to peer relationship versus when interacting with someone in leadership, someone who's over you, like a boss, a manager, pastor, etc.?
That's a great question. I really feel like the principles are the same all the way. Again, I'm not covering all the scenarios, and there may be a nuance there. But as far as empathy, honesty, confidence, and humility, I think those are the principles. Uh, am I willing to adjust my own perspective? Am I willing to listen? Am I willing to understand those overlaps between what I want, what I fear, what they want, what they fear? Can we find the win-win? Um, just that dialogue of being honest and open resolves so many conflicts. I want to jump. I see this. What are some approaches when the other party does not seem willing to assume the best about you, while you make efforts to assume the best about them? I think that the other person isn't necessarily following all of these steps. And the truth is, we're gonna. That's why we talked about others and understanding their nervous system state. If someone's feeling under threat, they feel like their safety, their connectedness, or their value is under attack. Then their defenses are up, and their nervous system may not be in a way in a state that is assuming the best about you are going to approach this the best way. Um, but if we can lean in, there's just these things. They're designed to give those cues of safety and connectedness and value that bring that temperature down and allow for a productive dialogue. Is it going to work every time? I can't promise that. I can't promise that you're going to be able to find a perfect resolution to every conflict, but I think that these are the best approaches.
It's great stuff. This has been fantastic, Kirk. Like I said already, I learned a lot. I felt a little convicted at points, to be honest, but yeah, it's really great. We do have some more questions, but I would just encourage people to ask those in the ArtSpeak University Slack channel. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Kirk, for this amazing session. And yeah, join us in the ArtSpeak University Slack and the community online, and we'll see everybody next week.
And we'll take these questions, the ones we didn't get to, and we'll put them in Slack and we'll continue the dialogue there. Thank you, everybody.